Well, Tom, we have another long question, but very well thought out and very interesting. This is from Janis in Latvia. I've been following and practicing the ideas in my big toe for years now, and I feel like I've been waiting for something like this my entire life. However, there's one question that has stayed with me all these years. My question is about astrology. You've mentioned more than once that astrology may be based on a kind of structure that makes it easier for the LCS to introduce diversity among IUOCs, and for predictions, planets are just tools to focus attention, with the actual process being intuition-based. I've been thinking deeply about this, and to me, it seems like there must be a third element in the equation. From the astrologer's point of view, the process of chart interpretation is mostly a matter of calculation. When the time and place of a person's birth are known, a unique birth chart can be created using the planetary positions at that exact moment. This part does not involve intuitive or interpretation. It is purely mathematical, right? Later, when astrologers make predictions, or rather observe potential future influences, they look at when a planet, for example virtual Saturn, will make significant connections to specific points in the birth chart. This too is calculated. It can even be done for someone who hasn't been born yet. If someone were to be born at a certain time and place, we can already calculate when specific experiences are more likely, such as relationship or career challenges. We don't know exactly what will happen, but we often know when the challenges or specific changes in a person's life will arise, even 70 years before. Of course, this doesn't apply on highly precise forecasts. They tend to be in near future, and there the astrologer's intuitive process seems to be very likely, as you say. That could explain why many astrologers use slightly different methods but still reach similar conclusions. But the major influences tend to be the same for everyone. Importantly, astrology doesn't claim life as predetermined. Free will and personal choices still shape outcomes, but the timing, when certain themes or challenges emerge, seems surprisingly reliable, sometimes extraordinary. Events can be predicted decades in advance with accuracy down to the day, and that is calculated. I've thought a lot about how this connects with MBT. I wonder if perhaps the larger consciousness system creates a kind of underlying temporal structure in the virtual reality, a framework of probabilities set in advance. Maybe this structure helps organize experiences to maximum evolutionary opportunity, making it easier to insert IUOCs into life paths where they face the right challenges at the right time. It could also help the LCS manage what's happening here more efficiently. In my mind, this wouldn't violate any part of the MBT model. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Jonas, that was very good. Uh, you've obviously paid attention to the things I've said. You have thought a lot more about this than I have thought about this. I've had people ask me, well, what about astrology? It seems to sometimes be astoundingly correct. I attributed most of that to the ability of the astrologer to collect that information. But of course, there is more to it than just what the astrologer comes up with. Otherwise, the astrologer might as well be looking at tea leaves or something else, which are almost entirely intuitive, although they will tell you that there are certain patterns in the tea leaves that represent certain things. And everybody who's a good tea leaf reader understands these patterns and can recognize them. But it's there. But yes, that's just a communication format for the larger conscious systems, putting the tea leaves in the right form. Anyhow, I think he had some really good points. Now, one of the observations I made that he didn't mention is that most people agree that when you go to the local newspaper and read what the horoscopes are for each sign of the zodiac. So if you're a Sagittarius, you can just look up that day what the newspaper says about being a Sagittarius. That those tend to be very generic and general and not too specific. They're very generic things. And if people really want to get a reading done, they don't go to the local newspaper for it. That's seen as very general and not specific. So then they have to go to an astrologer to do that reading for them. That tells me that the calculations that are done generally aren't all that specific, because a computer can calculate all of the calculations of the birth time, the birthplace, where all of the planets and moons and sun and everything else is, and they can compute that to 20 decimal places easily. And they can do it in probably a microsecond, make all those calculations. And for everybody who was born at that time, at that place, there it is. And that may be many people that were born within plus or minus a few minutes of that place. Depends on how big the city is and how many people are born at a particular time. But in any case, so I had the idea then that just calculating it, doing the precision calculations to as many decimal places as you want, was trivial. All you have to know is what are the algorithms, and you can compute it. And if that is the main place where astrologers were getting their information, is from these calculations, then the newspaper ought to be as good as astrologers. If just doing the calculations was all it took to get the right answers. So many of the astrologers who are actually computers, just computing, don't have a real good reputation of being precise, being on the money for those individuals. It's just kind of generally correct. Yes, all Leos kind of act this way. And all Sagittarius kind of act this way. That's true, but that's a very general thing. And yes, calculations can produce those kind of generalities, and for the most part, they fit pretty well. So that was my reason for coming up with what I had. But now, Janis offers some other possibilities that I had never thought of, and I think they're pretty good. You know, he offered the idea that the system could use this as a kind of a set of constraints that would make it easier for them to place new avatars with people with certain problems. And I never thought of that before. So thank you, Janis. I thought that's a very clever assessment, and that's certainly a possibility. Didn't go to that large an extent, but I think you have a good point there, because that is a place that kind of has no real explanation for it. You know, you have a person who dies. Now they want to have another incarnation, and the system picks something for them. Well, the system has a lot of information. They have the kind of information of what kind of family is that entity going to be born into? What kind of parents is it going to have, and grandparents, and social situation, and are they wealthy or poor? Are they this culture or that culture? So that would allow it to come up with some very rough approximations of what would be a good target for a particular incarnation. But what Janis suggests would be a lot more precise. So I kind of like the idea, because it adds precision to that function that otherwise is a pretty crude, broad brush function. So I think you may be onto something there.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Janis, for submitting such a well thought out question that Tom hasn't fully addressed, as he said. So thank you so much. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You have more power than you think. Hi, This is Donna from MBT Events. I have had the privilege to work with Tom Campbell for nearly 20 years now, and I can tell you from the feedback received through all those years that he has improved and changed thousands of lives with his My Big Toe theory. As a physicist and explorer of the larger reality, Tom has developed a program where you can learn to access and develop your natural ability as consciousness. His expertly crafted binaural beats are included. Details are in the description below. Thank you.
I and MBT Events hope you like this video. If you do, then you should consider being a Patreon member, because Patreon members get early access to our special content. You will also be able to get your questions answered by me in special Q&A sessions, and most importantly, your contribution as a patron member will enable us to produce the content that you're looking for. So thank you.